Göbekli Tepe itself was the end of a process, not the beginning of a process. It was something that marked, it was a marker. It was something that brought together the best of everything that they'd accumulated and created it in one place.
Göbekli Tepe wasn't the beginning of civilization. It was the final chapter of something we were never supposed to find. For decades, historians believed early humans were barely surviving, hunting, gathering, and struggling just to make it through the day. But buried beneath a quiet hill in Turkey is a structure that completely destroys that story. Because this site wasn't built by farmers, it wasn't built by kings, and it definitely wasn't built by people without advanced knowledge. In 2025, scientists used cutting-edge laser scanners and artificial intelligence to analyze the deepest layers of this ancient temple. What the data revealed sent shockwaves through the scientific world. Perfect geometry, machine-like precision, and evidence of techniques that shouldn't exist at the end of the Ice Age. The question is no longer how Göbekli Tepe was built. The real question is, what kind of civilization had to disappear for this place to exist?
We'd never before known or imagined even that simple hunter-gatherers could produce such spectacular monumental structures.
There is a massive stone complex hidden in the desert of southeastern Turkey that should not exist at all. Its name is Gobekli Tepe, and it forces historians to confront the timeline that no longer makes sense. Most people are taught that human history truly began with ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, but Gobekli Tepe is far older than both. Archaeologists date its construction to around 9,600 years before the Common Era, making it more than 11,000 years old. By the time the first stones of Stonehenge were placed in England, this site had already been built, used, and intentionally buried. That alone would be shocking, but the context makes it even worse. Gobekli Tepe was constructed long before writing, long before metal tools, and long before agriculture. The people who built it didn't have the wheel. They didn't raise livestock. They weren't supposed to live in permanent settlements at all. And yet, standing on top of a man-made hill, archaeologists uncovered the earliest known temple on Earth, one so large and complex that it immediately raised an impossible question. If humanity was still in its most primitive stage, who had the knowledge to build something like this? And that question only grows more disturbing once you look at what the site is actually made of. Göbekli Tepe isn't a single structure. It's a massive complex made up of more than 20 circular enclosures, each one carefully arranged and deliberately planned. At the center of every enclosure stand towering stone pillars shaped like the letter T. These pillars are not small. Some rise more than 18 feet into the air and weigh as much as 50 tons. That's roughly the weight of 3 fully loaded school buses stacked on top of each other. Even with modern equipment, moving stones of that size is a serious engineering challenge. And here's where the story starts to break down. The stones weren't sitting on top of the hill waiting to be used. They were carved directly out of solid bedrock at the bottom of the slope, then somehow transported uphill to the summit. No wheels, no pack animals, no metal tools, just human muscle, rope, and techniques we still don't fully understand. Modern engineers have studied the site and admit that recreating this feat today would require heavy machinery, cranes, and a coordinated team of specialists. Yet the builders of Göbekli Tepe managed it over 11,000 years ago. But moving massive stones was only the first problem they solved. What they did to the pillars after placing them is even harder to explain. Once the pillars were standing, the builders didn't stop at raw construction. They turned each massive stone into a work of art, one that still feels unsettling even today. Every pillar at Göbekli Tepe is covered in detailed carvings of animals: lions with exposed ribs, snarling foxes, scorpions, snakes, and towering vultures. These aren't peaceful scenes. They're aggressive, tense, and deliberately intimidating, as if the temple was meant to inspire fear as much as awe. What makes this even more disturbing is how the carvings were made. These figures are carved in high relief, meaning the animals rise out from the surface of the stone itself. To achieve that, the carver had to remove all the surrounding limestone while leaving the figure untouched. One wrong strike, one slip of the hand, and weeks of work would be destroyed. And they weren't working with soft stone. Göbekli Tepe's limestone is extremely dense and difficult to shape, especially using nothing with stone tools. Yet the carvings are clean, consistent, and incredibly precise, with no visible signs of hesitation or correction. This level of craftsmanship requires time, skill, and specialization, which leads to a serious contradiction. People struggling just to survive don't spend years carving perfect stone animals. And that's when the official story about who built Göbekli Tepe begins to fall apart. According to the official story, the people who built Göbekli Tepe were simple hunter-gatherers. They moved constantly, following animals and seasonal plants, never staying in one place for very long. But that explanation collapses the moment you look at what this site actually required. Hunter-gatherers don't have surplus food. They don't support hundreds of workers who aren't hunting or gathering. They don't organize massive construction projects that take decades, let alone centuries to complete. To build Göbekli Tepe, someone had to feed large groups of people every single day. Someone had to plan the work, assign roles, and maintain order. And someone had to decide that this place was important enough to return to again and again for over 1,000 years. That kind of structure doesn't come from a wandering lifestyle. It comes from an organized society. And that realization flips history on its head, because Göbekli Tepe suggests that complex social organization existed long before farming, cities, or written language. In fact, some researchers now believe the site wasn't built after civilization began. It may have been the reason civilization began at all. But just as unsettling as how this society came together is how deliberately it chose to disappear. Around 8,000 years before the Common Era, something strange happened at Göbekli Tepe. The people who had been using the site for more than 1,000 years didn't abandon it, and they didn't let time slowly wear it away. They buried it, not with drifting sand or natural erosion, but with intention. Thousands upon thousands of tons of soil, stone, animal bones, and broken tools were hauled in from miles away and packed tightly around the enclosures. The result was a massive artificial hill designed to completely hide the temple from the world. This wasn't done in a hurry by accident, and it wasn't the result of a disaster. It was careful, controlled, almost ceremonial. Archaeologists estimate that more than 10 million cubic feet of material were used to seal the site. That's an unimaginable amount of labor spent not on building something new, but on erasing something old. And what makes this even more unsettling is what was found inside the fill. Human skulls carved with deep grooves, statues deliberately smashed and placed face down, objects arranged in ways that suggest closure, not chaos. It doesn't look like a collapse. It looks like a farewell. And for 10,000 years, whatever happened at Göbekli Tepe stayed hidden until modern technology finally gave scientists a way to look closer. In 2025, researchers returned to Göbekli Tepe with technology that didn't exist even a decade earlier. High-resolution laser scanners were used to map the site in extreme detail, capturing features smaller than the width of a human hair. That data was then fed into artificial intelligence systems designed to detect patterns no human eye would ever notice. What the AI found was deeply unsettling. When it analyzed the 3 oldest enclosures, it identified the exact center point of each one. On their own, the measurement seemed unremarkable, but when those points were connected, they formed a perfect equilateral triangle. Not roughly, not approximately, perfect. The distances between each point matched to within a fraction of an inch, despite the uneven terrain and massive scale of the site. Achieving that level of precision requires an understanding of advanced geometry and long-distance measurement techniques. And yet, the builders of Göbekli Tepe supposedly had no rulers, no written numbers, and no recorded mathematical system. This wasn't accidental alignment. It was intentional design, which means the people who built this place weren't just stacking stones. They were applying mathematical knowledge that wouldn't officially appear for thousands of years. But the geometry was only the beginning, because when the AI turned its attention to the stones themselves, it found something even harder to explain. For decades, archaeologists believed the massive pillars at Göbekli Tepe were shaped using a simple technique called pecking, hitting stone with stone over and over again until the desired shape slowly emerged. But the 2025 scans told a very different story. Along the edges of the pillars, the AI identified linear cuts that were shockingly precise. Some of them stretch more than 3 feet in a perfectly straight line. Their width measures only a fraction of an inch, and their depth remains consistent from start to finish. That kind of cut isn't something stone tools are known to produce. When researchers compared the marks to thousands of known tool signatures, nothing matched. Stone tools usually leave jagged, uneven edges. These cuts were smooth, clean, and unnaturally uniform. Even more disturbing, there was no evidence of metal, no bronze residue, no iron traces, no chemical signatures left behind. Yet the marks look mechanical, almost as if the stone was sliced rather than struck. The AI also detected surface textures that suggest the limestone wasn't just cut cut. In certain areas, it appears to have been altered by heat, as if the stone had softened before being shaped. And that discovery opened the door to a possibility scientists weren't ready to confront, because once heat enters the equation, everything we thought we knew about Göbekli Tepe starts to unravel. When researchers followed the evidence of heat back to its source, they uncovered something even more unsettling hidden in the ancient quarries themselves. Deep inside the bedrock, scientists found clear signs of extreme thermal exposure. Chemical analysis revealed that parts of the limestone had been heated to temperatures exceeding 700 degrees Fahrenheit, then rapidly cooled. This process, known as thermal shock, causes stone to fracture along controlled lines. It's a technique still used today, but here's a problem. To use thermal shock without shattering an entire block, you need precise knowledge of the stone's internal structure. You have to understand natural fault lines, heat penetration, and cooling rates. One miscalculation and a 50-ton pillar would crack in half. Yet, at Göbekli Tepe, there's no evidence of trial and error. The earliest pillars are the most precise. There are no ruined attempts, no shattered failures buried nearby. It's as if the builders already knew exactly how the stone would behave. Even more disturbing, traces of heat weren't limited to the quarries. Some of the finished animal carvings show signs of surface smoothing, consistent with high temperature exposure, as if heat was used to refine details rather than carve them by force. Modern stonemasons rely on diamond blades or high-pressure water to achieve similar results. The idea that something comparable was happening over 11,000 years ago raises the chilling question. If this level of knowledge suddenly appeared at the end of the Ice Age, where did it come from? And just as importantly, why did it vanish without a trace? The most disturbing pattern at Göbekli Tepe isn't what appears in the stone, it's what doesn't appear at all. There is no learning curve. Normally, when a new technology emerges, archaeologists find mistakes, cracked stones, failed attempts, rough early versions that slowly improve over time. But at Göbekli Tepe, the opposite is true. The earliest structures are the most refined, the most precise, and the most technically advanced. It's as if the builders arrived already knowing exactly what they were doing. That suggests this knowledge wasn't being invented on site. It was being carried forward from somewhere else, some earlier tradition that left no obvious trace behind. And then, just as suddenly as it appears, it disappears. After the site was buried, the people living in the same region returned to simple huts and basic tools. The geometry bench, the advanced stoneworking bench, even the understanding of heat-based techniques seems to have been completely lost. Some researchers believe this wasn't a gradual decline, but the result of a sudden global disruption. A massive climatic event at the end of the Ice Age, possibly linked to the Younger Dryas, could have brought floods, fires, and rapid cooling that shattered an advanced but fragile society. If that's true, Göbekli Tepe wasn't abandoned because it failed. It was sealed because its builders knew their world was ending, and the temple may have been buried not to erase the past, but to preserve it for whoever came next. Göbekli Tepe isn't just an ancient temple. It's a message from a lost chapter of human history, a civilization so advanced yet so mysterious that even modern scientists are left questioning what we thought we knew about our past. From perfect geometry and 50-ton pillars to heat-altered stone carvings, this site proves that our ancestors were far more capable than we've been led to believe. And yet, they vanished, leaving behind a buried time capsule that has kept their secrets hidden for over 10,000 years. What happened to them? Why was this knowledge lost? And what does it say about humanity's future if advanced knowledge can disappear so completely? Göbekli Tepe challenges us to rethink history and maybe even ourselves. If this story blew your mind, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more unbelievable discoveries from our mysterious past. And share your thoughts. What do you think really happened at Göbekli Tepe?